achieved.
Welcome back to Kamikaze Overdrive MMA Predictions. As always, I am your host, Scott Johnson, and on this episode of the show, we're breaking down the upcoming UFC Fight Night 64 event, which will take place this April 11th, which is this Saturday, and it'll be the UFC's first foray into Poland. The event takes place in Krakow, Poland. I'll be giving you my predictions for the 4 main card fights on this episode of the show. All of my preliminary breakdowns will be available at kamikazeoverdrive.net. So now that we have the formalities out of the way, we're looking at this card saying, okay, who cares? The 4-fight main card is a little bit interesting, has some noteworthy names on it for a couple of reasons. The prelims are relatively devoid of depth as far as who's who of UFC fighters. A lot of debuting guys are relative unknowns. Either way, I'm still going to break them down. I might not do as extensive write-up for the prelims, but I'll do my best. The bet packs will still be available. Certainly still 3 cards left in April. So for 3 bet packs, you can buy the 3 bet packs for $25, save yourself $5, or you can buy the single bet pack for $10. I'm coming off a 6-4 event at UFC Fight Night 63. Should have been 7-3. I thought the Masvidal fight went the wrong way. I made a very minimal profit because of that. I won back everything I bet, plus a little bit more in betting units from the bet packs. Had Masvidal been given the win, it would have been a significantly better night. Unfortunately, it just wasn't meant to be. Either way, if you're interested in betting, consider buying the bet packs, as certainly they are producing. And at the very least, if they just break even, you're getting your money back. Also, the DraftKings competition. The last couple of shows, we haven't been able to fill out our bracket. We've been doing 20s, and we just haven't got there. 20 entries. So for this card, because I know it's not that popular, I'm going to cut it back to 10 people probably, maybe 15 at the most, but I'm going to up the entry fee. I think the entry fee might be $15-20, which means you have a much better chance of walking away with a couple $100 in prize winnings. So certainly take a look for that. And this is one of those cards that's really going to bring out the top level MMA predictors as far as this tournament is concerned, because you're really going to have to delve deep to find those winners, because you don't know as much offhand about some of these guys. So if you are interested, click on any of the banners and we'll get to the end. Sign up for the tournament right there. We got 4 fights. Let's break the first one down. We kick off the main card in about this, probably the most important of all the fights on this event, on this card. It takes place in the women's strawweight division as the number 6th ranked Joanne JoJo Calderwood, undefeated 9-0, battles the debuting Maryna Moroz. I'm probably pronouncing that wrong. She currently holds a record of 5 wins and no losses, also undefeated coming into this. Now, Moroz, she's debuting, as I said. She's from the Ukraine, so in the general geographical location, undefeated at 5-0. She has some wins over some decent regional competition, with her last 3 opponents having a respectable 23-9 record. But again, with the lack of depth outside of the UFC, it's hard to really accrue big names victories unless you're fighting probably in Invicta, or now that Bellator's starting to get into women's fighting. For Calderwood, she's undefeated as a pro. She was ranked number 2 on the Ultimate Fighter tournament to crown the champion, but she lost via Kimura to Rose Namajuanis in the quarterfinals after winning her first round matchup. For JoJo, 4 wins by knockout, 5 wins by decision. 4 of her last 5 wins have gone the distance. For Moroz, again, I'm probably saying that wrong. 1 win by knockout, 4 wins by submission. Only 1 fight has gone outside of the first round for the Ukrainian, and it happened to be her pro debut. Physically, Calderwood's 5'6", Moroz 5'7", so very tall girls for the division. Now, keep in mind here, one thing with the Ukrainian too, all 4 of her victories have come by armbar. That's noteworthy. We'll talk about that in a moment. Actually, in her last fight, her opponent landed kind of a sneaky Superman punch right off the hop, and Moroz dropped right to her back and started looking for a submission right away. You can kind of see she's kind of very not one-dimensional, but single-minded in her efforts to win the fight. She didn't initially get the sub. She spent a lot of time on her back, took some damage from the position. She showed some very good dexterity in her legs, attacking, looking for submission opportunities. As I said, she held that position. She eventually maneuvered into an opportunity to land the armbar and ended the fight. In most situations, her opponent probably should have backed out, knowing what her bread and butter is. It's submission. Backed out, got back to the feet, and kept working from that position. On the feet, she's not an overwhelmingly great striker. She's aggressive, but the majority of her action is, her offense is predicated or set up around looking for, to put her opponent on the mat. Now, as far as a lot of arm bars, it sounds similar to Ronda Rousey, but she's certainly not Ronda Rousey. Rousey has that dominant skill set that leads to submissions. She's able to put her opponent in a position to submit them. For Moroz, it appears she's more reliant on her opponent's willingness to compete on the floor. She's very opportunistic in her grappling, but at the same time, she's not going to put an opponent who doesn't want to be there on the mat. For Calderwood, Muay Thai-based fighter, very good striker, good leg kicks, good knees, good elbows, good combinations overall, and she certainly has power. She's a very patient striker, measures distance exceptionally well, throws a lot of low and push kicks, which can be very effective, helps to manage distance with that, and she's very strong in the Thai clinch. look out for her stepping knees and elbow strike counters if her opponent does look to push forward. Now JoJo's a bit of a slow starter, and we saw that in her last fight. She really opened up in the second round of that matchup after kind of gauging the distance in the first round, kind of getting the feeling for her opponent's timing. But she does have trouble has some trouble with footwork and movement. She has a little limited head movement, and she was getting tagged with a left hand by Ham and her opponent last time out. And that's something she wants to be concerned with, but again, she should have a significant striking advantage in this fight, and that's something that I like. And at times she can be too calm, I think, almost complacent, and she needs to be careful not to get caught, and I think that's going to be actually a benefit to her. I think she should be able to defend the takedown attempts by her opponent, and she can't recklessly dive in, Verdum Fedor style, and that could get her caught. But again, I said, I think her patience is going to pay off here, so it's going to avoid any mistakes that will allow her opponent to capitalize and submit her. I think she's going to counter Moroz as she looks to come forward, do some damage, and if the opponent gives up position looking for a submission, she'll really make her pay for it. Moroz is debuting. She has a limited window to win. She seems to be one-dimensional. Her method to pick up victories and doesn't have a full skill set to complement her submission game. Another scenario I'm looking at, the UFC is going to Scotland in a little over 3 months, about 13 weeks from when this event will be taking place, which happens to be JoJo's home country. And this fight happens to be taking place in the new women's champion for this division, Joanna Jędrzejczyk. We just saw her win the title. Very interesting if Calderwood would pick up this fight and pick up the win here. They might set up a title fight in Scotland when they meet there next. That'd be a massive main event for that card. Either way, I think JoJo, she could score the knockout, but my prediction is Joanne Calderwood to defeat Maryna Moroz by decision. Fight number 2 in the main card takes place in the UFC's welterweight division and will feature Polish-born Pawlak with a record of 10 wins and 1 loss, taking on Canadian Sheldon Westcott with a current record of 9 wins, 2 losses, and a draw. Now, Pawlak, as I said, he's fighting at home, which is a massive advantage coming into this. Both guys are making their second appearance in the UFC, and Westcott is cutting to 170 pounds for the first time in his career. He's also fighting for the first time in a year, and for Pawlak, not exactly a quick turnaround either. He's coming off an 11th-month layoff since his UFC debut. Both guys were unfortunately defeated in their debuts. Westcott lost in the Ultimate Fighter finals to Elias Teodoro. And it was actually his first pro loss since making his professional debut. For Pawlak, his loss was to the returning Peter Svoboda, and it was his first pro loss, period. Physically, Pawlak a 2-inch height advantage and a 2-inch reach advantage. And I said Westcott is debuted at middleweight, so he's and formerly fought at middleweight, so he's fought some bigger men before, so this shouldn't be a big issue for him. Looking at Pawlak, he was taken down in his debut fight. He showed a pretty decent defensive guard. He used mission control a little bit, landed some elbows off his back, but for the most part, he was stuck in the position for pretty much all of the second round. And similarly, in the third round, he swung wildly looking for a big haymaker, and he got taken down again. He really struggled overall creating separation. That's certainly a big red flag when you're taking on somebody like Sheldon Westcott. Overall, he does have 3 wins by submission, one of those coming by punches, so it shows he does have some submission skills. Also in that fight, he struggled with the pressure of Svoboda. He seemed to be backing up and focusing entirely on defense and really not doing a heck of a lot. His output was limited for the most part, and he tended to back straight up in that fight as well, which is, again, against someone who's a bully and a bull rusher like Westcott, that's not going to do well. He does have 6 wins by knockout, which suggests he has power on the feet, and that's something we'll be looking for in this fight. For Westcott, he's incredibly aggressive. Wrestling base, likes to bully and overwhelm his opposition, work in the clinch and on the mat. He has 3 wins by submission, all by guillotine. Also 3 wins by knockout. Both of his wins in the show to get him into the tournament finals came by submission in the first round. He has 6 first-round finishes overall. And to give you an idea of how quickly this guy likes to work, 5 of those 6 came in under 60 seconds, and 4 of those came in under 30 seconds. So the guy likes to get things done very quickly. Against Elias Teodoro, he took him down right off the bat, really going at him, and was controlling the fight early on, but he faded late in round 1. And overall, he's 2-2-1 in bouts that go beyond the first round, which suggests that his cardio and his ability to carry his pace isn't that great, even though he does have a couple victories recently that went the distance. I said the major concern for me is the Canadian, fighting on enemy soil, and if he, can't get the fight to go his way early on, if he does look to, take that pace to him and try and outwork him and overwhelm him early, if he fades, that's going to be a major issue. For Pawlak, he really struggled with the wrestling and top game of Svoboda, didn't offer much of offense off his back, and Svoboda, he wasn't overwhelming from the top position. That's something that I think Westcott will be. It's always a concern picking against a guy fighting at home, because the UFC likes to give guys stylistic matchups they think the home guy can win to build the market there, and look forward to that. But from what I see, I've got to go with the Canadian. So my prediction is Sheldon Westcott to defeat Pawlak by submission. Now we move to the co-main event of the evening in the UFC's light heavyweight division. This is a pretty interesting fight as well. As number 9 ranked Jimi, the poster boy Manuwa, 14-1-0, takes on Jan Blachowicz with a current record of 18 wins and 3 losses. Now this is a big fight for the UFC and European light heavyweight scene. Both guys are two of the top light heavyweights in their respective countries. Of course, Blachowicz from Poland, fighting at home, former KSW champion. For Jimi Manuwa, he's been out of action for 13 months. He's coming off the first defeat of his pro career, which is a knockout loss to former title challenger Alexander Gustafsson, which, you know, it can be a big deal. Physically, Blachowicz 1-inch height advantage, 4-inch reach advantage, so he is the bigger man. Blachowicz coming into this riding a 6-fight winning streak. He won his UFC debut, and he has several wins prior to that over former UFC fighters: Sokoudjou, Mario Miranda, Houston Alexander, Gorian Reljic. So certainly has been fighting some decent caliber guys outside of the UFC prior to, you know, making the jump, where he defeated Ilari Latifi by first-round knockout. For Manuwa, 13 of his 14 wins have come by knockout. 2 of his 3 UFC knockouts, though, came by injury TKO. A lot of people talked about voodoo or something to have the effect of his impacting his fights. It's kind of interesting to see that happen, and fortunate at the same time. For Blachowicz, much more diverse record: 5 wins by knockout, 7 by submission, and 6 by decision. He also has 1 loss in each of those categories. He does have 4 straight decision wins coming, prior to his UFC debut, which suggests, you kind of see that drop off in finishes once a guy takes a step up in competition. But as he did get the finish in his first UFC fight, he had a nasty body kick to Latifi, and eventually the follow-up strikes put him down. He has some significant power, but the big thing for him is he can work his wrestling. He was able to take Houston Alexander down several times and stay on top, which isn't a huge feat considering how bad Houston Alexander's defensive wrestling is, but still it showed he has that in his arsenal. Unfortunately, in that fight, he also went for a big throw and he missed it and spent some time on his back against Alexander. That's certainly concerning. Manuwa, though, 72% takedown defense. He's a kickboxer, and a lot of guys have looked to try and take him down, and for the most part, he's been successful. He's been hard to take off his feet. He's very strong in the clinch, which seems to be a place that Blachowicz might be looking to take him down, and that could be concerning if he attempts that. Now, Manuwa was taken down several times in his debut, and he has improved his takedown defense to a certain degree, but at the same time, it hasn't been super tested to the extent where, a top-level wrestler's been trying to put him on his back, and we'll see if Blachowicz can maybe change that up a bit. For Manuwa, he has a brutal striking repertoire: hard kicks, solid combinations, works his knees and elbows very effectively. And his opponent did have a TKO loss due to injury against Sokoudjou because of the leg kicks that Sokoudjou was able to land and injure him. And that's something, if he can't check leg kicks against Manuwa, it's going to pile up. We saw him do a lot of damage, and eventually Ryan Jimo had to stop his fight because of an injury sustained to his legs. And a lot of that had to do with the preceding attack that Jimi Manuwa had piled up on him. Again, also very dangerous in the clinch. He lands some nice knees. He was turning his knee over effectively and landing it right to the thigh area of Jimo, which was, seemed to be a very effective technique. The big question for me is, how has the layoff and preceding knockout impacted Manuwa and his psyche coming into this? That whole realm of invincibility is gone. But at the same time, everybody talks about, when you have that first pro loss, it makes you a better fighter. As you go back, you train, you work hard, and you get better. Where before, when you were winning all the time, you don't really see a reason to improve or mix things up or try to, change things. Another big question mark is cardio for Manuwa. Jan has shown he can go the distance and win several times, where Manuwa, he's never gone into the third round. And in that Kingsbury fight, which is UFC debut, sure, nerves would have played a role, but he was certainly getting tired despite dishing out the majority of the damage and controlling a lot of the action. Blachowicz is fighting at home and has a more well-rounded skill set overall. And while I really like Manuwa's kickboxing, and it should be a greater skill set overall, and he should be motivated after the loss, I've really gone back and forth on this pick. And in the end, I'm going to go with Jan Blachowicz to defeat Jimi Manuwa. I think he defeats Manuwa by decision. We move now to the main event of the evening. I guess technically, depending on where you're watching, it could be the afternoon. It's in the UFC's heavyweight division, and it is a rematch of an epic bout from a number of years ago, as the number 14th ranked former title challenger Gabriel Gonzaga, 16-9-0, battles the Pride legend Mirko Cro Cop with a record of 30 wins, 11 losses, and 2 no contests. Now, this is a rematch of a 2007 bout, which was won by Gabriel Gonzaga in crushingly ironic fashion with a head kick against one of the all-time masters of the head kick, which eventually ultimately earned Gonzaga a title shot in his next fight. Going into that matchup, Mirko had won 5 fights in a row, including his UFC debut. It was appearing he was being put in a position to win a fight against Gonzaga and earn a shot at Randy Couture for the title. Gabriel Gonzaga, though, had won 5 in a row as well, and was looking quite good in the process. Unfortunately, after he took out Mirko in the first round, he lost to Couture for the title via TKO, and it's never really been the same since. Since that matchup, Cro Cop has gone 8-6 with a no contest mixed in there as well. Gabriel Gonzaga, an even 500 record at 8-8. I know both guys have taken some time away from the UFC at different points. Obviously, Cro Cop returning now, and Gonzaga took some time off and actually retired for a short period of time. In that first matchup, there was lots of stalking, a long feeling out process early on. Neither guy was landing too much. A lot of feints from Cro Cop, and Gabriel kind of bouncing around. Mirko threw a kick at one point, and Gabriel caught it and landed the takedown and really spent a lot of time on top. Held position, did a lot of damage. Mirko was using a closed guard, which I really don't like, kind of cementing that position, allowing Gonzaga to sit in his guard and beat him up. Not a ton of effort to stand up from Cro Cop's point of view, and I don't like that. If you get put on your back, you should be trying to get up. We know in this day and age, being on your back equals, for the most part, you're losing the fight. Now, ultimately, at the end, close to the end of the round, Herb Dean eventually stood them up, and I don't think it was actually warranted. I thought Gonzaga was staying busy. He wasn't advancing his position, but he was doing damage. I thought the stand-up was unwarranted, and for Mirko, you never know what would have happened. He probably would have been better off if he would have stayed on his back to the end of the round. And eventually, after that, the head kick with 9 seconds left in the round ended the fight and created a highlight that we've probably seen 100 times over the years. Coming into this matchup, Mirko, it's not really too surprising. He wants to keep this fight standing. We're not going to see him shooting on Gabriel Gonzaga to try and take him down. Work his kickboxing. He has some very sharp and nasty combinations, especially if he gets his opponent covering up. He works a nice uppercut in there. There's a nice stabbing jab. And, of course, he has that kicking game that he can really go to the body, go to the legs, and ultimately go to the head should the opportunity present itself. For Gabriel Gonzaga, he can fight on his feet. His last 2 wins in the UFC have come by knockout, but he also has 7 losses by knockout, so he's incredibly vulnerable if the fight does stay standing. But at the same time, for Mirko, the damage appears to be piling up as well for a guy who's spent the majority of his career as a striker, 5 losses by knockout, and he has been finished in his last 5 defeats overall as well. For Gabe, going back to Gonzaga, he fell in love with the striking, partially a product of the knockout of Mirko Cro Cop back in 2007, but he's kind of vowed to return to his grappling base, and we've seen that a lot. Despite those 2 knockout wins, we've seen him kind of return to his grappling base when the opportunity presented itself. When he came back to the UFC, he scored back-to-back submissions, landed 5 takedowns in those 2 fights, and looked very good before running into Travis Brown, I believe it was, who knocked him out with elbow strikes on a takedown attempt. Looking at Cro Cop, in addition to when he was taken down, we know he's been fighting grapplers off his entire career. He was taken down by Gonzaga in that first fight, but more recently when he fought Ishii in his last 2 matchups, he was taken down in the last fight and spent a considerable time on his back before eventually landing that head kick in the second round to earn the finish. In the fight prior to that, he was also taken down and scored a doctor stoppage with elbows off his back. So I guess you can win off your back. You just have to be very active and kind of lucky. Also, in the fight before that, he was submitted by Alexei Oleinik, who just debuted in the UFC a couple months ago. Actually, he's fought twice now, which is his only loss since his UFC departure. And that's something. It was that scarf hold submission, which shows he could be vulnerable if a guy can get a dominant position. For Gabriel Gonzaga, he's an absolute gorilla once he gets on top, and he's been having a lot of success. When he gets that grappling game going. In that first fight, he had a lot of success as well. Now, cardio is a major concern for Gonzaga. He has slowed down in fights after 1.5, 2 rounds of fighting. Mirko's not exactly a cardio horse, but I would give him the edge being a veteran fighter. Both guys are veterans. I think Mirko, paces himself a little bit better. Cro Cop can win this fight on the feet, absolutely. Gabe can as well, but the advantage on the mat is all the Brazilian, and that's where I think he's going to look to exploit it. As I said, there are some concerns that Gabe could slow down and Mirko could land something huge against a target who's not moving well, but simply Gabe has more levels to his game. I think he'll exploit the holes in Cro Cop's. Some thought the UFC picked up Mirko to keep him from Bellator, not because they wanted to come back because of an improved skill set. Keep in mind, when Mirko last fought in UFC, he was 36 years of age, and he looked done. Now he's 40, and I don't see the improvements that are going to lead him to another run. Gabe has shown he can win at this level. He's picked up some decent wins despite his losses against top-level competition. Either way, my prediction is Gabriel Gonzaga to defeat Mirko Cro Cop. I'll take him by sub, but there's a great possibility he could score a ground-based TKO. Ooh, that last prediction was a lot longer than I expected it to be. Nonetheless, those are my 4 predictions for the main card of the UFC Fight Night 64 event. Some of these events, now I know it's an afternoon card on Saturday. It's a lot of unknown fighters. Still, it's worth tuning into. Certainly, it's a good chance to make some money because these unknown fighters sometimes are very difficult to set lines for when you're betting, and I think we can exploit that. I'll have to look into it. There's a lot of close lines actually for this card as well, so that's worth taking a look at. As I said, my prelim predictions will be available at kamikazeoverdrive.net. The DraftKings link will be posted there as well. Again, 10, maybe 15 people. I'm going to up the price a little bit for this card. So if you are really into it might be $15 for the DraftKings entry. if that's possible. And either way, it's going to be a sizable return, and you'll have like a 1 in 10, 1 in 15 chance of doing it. Also, just worth noting, I originally was on Jimi Manuwa right up until I said who my prediction. I've never done that before. I completely changed who I was predicting. I think Blachowicz can take this fight. I kept reading the things I had put down in my write-up, seemed to be favoring him, and even though I like Jimi Manuwa, he could easily walk away with this fight. I'm going to take the Polish fighter at home to come up with a big performance here. As always, thank you guys for tuning in. We got a lot of fights, 2 more fights in this month alone. Let's keep the success rolling, and tune in next time. Take care, guys.